That's the number. By the way, to his credit, the only AG in the country doing this.
I also believe, Jim, that I've been given the impression by the AG's office that they may be looking at the amount of foreclosures and bank walkaways that happened in your communities as a part of the formula too. But that's not looking at it to give you money for it, just to give you the capability of asking for your $1 million or your $2 million.
Was that the second? That was the second question.
That's the second one.
Okay. And I'm glad you didn't do 3 in a row, because if people do that, I'm always asking, but what was the third one? But I'm glad you did it one at a time.
And I don't want to monopolize, thank you. We're City Councilman in Warren, and we were told initially that you couldn't use the bond monies to do this, but then reading some of your paperwork, I think Ohio Revised Code 725 area, that you can.
Ultimately, you're going to need legal opinions, all right? So, and I can bring you something from Squires, and again, Mayor, I don't mean to be a...
Squires is our authority.
Okay, I don't mean to be the guy, you know, causing trouble. I think you can, and we have to look at it, but it's not my call, it's your call. All I'm saying is you've got this one-time opportunity,
right.
And, you know, people say, what's this going to cost the community? I'll tell you what I think you need to look at. Start thinking 5 and 10 years out about how property values started to work their way back up, because the decay or the decline that gives people such a bad impression isn't there. And in the space of those vacant properties, you've got green, maybe trees, maybe an expanded yard for the next door neighbor.
Farm gardens.
What's that? Yeah. I have to tell you a funny story. When I was on that 60 Minutes program, a woman called me from an Indian reservation in the West, and she said she wanted to come to Cleveland, but she needed 10 acres. And I kind of thought, okay, fine. Then she said, but I have one question to ask you. She says, is medical marijuana legal in Ohio? No, we have gambling, I said. But anyway, I don't think she's interested in 10 acres anymore.
This other question, and you may not be able to answer this, but on taking homes down by controlled burn,
I think the fire department might do 1 or 2 a year, right? 2 or 3? I don't know. You have to ask Mayor Franklin. No.
And that may not be your area.
And that's another EPA issue that, and I owe another thanks to Mr. Rokakis, because I'm one of the individuals that he was constantly hearing from. You know, you're working with these legislators, start working on something to get us a little bit of leeway with this EPA issues and so forth, and God bless them for doing it, because I know that some of the wall behind you is softer than some of the barriers he's started to run into already with it, but he's not quitting. He's working with legislators trying to work on that issue.
You know, Stan, the problem with EPA is politically a very potent issue. I can tell you that without reservations, some folks in some parties love to beat up EPA, and for what it's worth, if I think we're going to get any movement quickly, I think we're going to see some quick movement at the Ohio EPA level. The tougher nut to crack is going to be federal. So.
Thank you.
Yes.
When do you think the state's going to finalize the formula for how they're going to distribute the money?
Late, I would guess late June, early July. They've already set it up as a program that will begin July 1, 2012.
So they're going to wait till late?
Well, they're working on it. No, they're working on
it. It just seems, what bothers me is it seems a little bit unfair in the fact that, you know, like the cities and even the county, is that, you know, you're talking about the D-tax money and you're talking about floating a bond for X amount of dollars. You know, when you don't know whether or not you're going to get that amount of money, I just, you know, I worry about that, and I worry about the effect. I can understand. I'm looking at the mayor. I can understand his distress. I mean, obviously, if he had money, he'd be tearing down the houses within his cities. Every city would. I just worry about that. I worry about borrowing money without knowing what the terms are, what the formula is yet. You know,
right. So
how much are we going to get?
The point is, we're only operating on limited information, but I think it's pretty reliable that there's going to be a match requirement. And obviously, you're not going to borrow here until you know what that match requirement is. And obviously, the mayor wouldn't take any additional steps either until you know exactly what it is. So, to complicate matters further, let me talk to you about Restore Our Neighborhood Act. Restore Our Neighborhood Act is a tax credit bill, so it's not free. And because interest rates are so low, which is horrible if you're the treasurer, you're trying to earn interest for your county, and interest rates are in the basement. But here's the way the federal tax credit bill will work. There will be $240 million worth of tax credits for Ohio. But to access that $240 million, so you know it's not free, there has to be $100 million raised in Ohio. Because that $100 million will go into a sinking fund, and in 30 years, that $100 million is $240 million, and the bondholders get repaid. The tax credit is where the feds step in. They are issuing tax credits 4 times a year to the buyers of these bonds. Ironically, probably banks, heavily banks, which may even be something we use to give CRA credits. But the point is that on the Restore Our Neighborhood, let's be wildly optimistic. Steve LaTourette and Congressman Ryan, our bipartisan coalition, passes it this year. If they pass it this year, and those credits are available in 2013, the AG may have $35 million left that he hasn't spent yet. That $35 million in a sinking fund, to confuse you even further, will leverage over $90 million. So all of a sudden, the AG has spent 35, right? And he's matched 35, so 70 million has been spent. But that 35 million left could go into a sinking fund and leverage another 90. So, because one of the pitches we're making in the state of Ohio, we've been to the governor's office now a number of times, is they have to view this problem, if we're able to pass the federal bill, is one they have to contribute to. Because there's a jobs component here. You take down 100,000 houses in this state, and you're hiring a lot of people. And you can hire people who are the chronically unemployed, right? There is a jobs component for how you treat the property post-demolition. There's an economic development issue, so we think they could make a strong argument in the economic development department of the state. So there's a lot of, Cleveland Foundation has committed a substantial amount of money. If that bill passes, they want to commit a substantial amount of money because they want to use it to do a job training act, to a job training component, and hire people involved, quite frankly, in the demolition of their own neighborhoods. Now I've really confused you, but let's just think about the AG money, because that's here. So my point to you is, no, you don't borrow a dime until you know exactly what the rules are.
And Darlene, you'll be hearing more by the end of next week what the rules are, because we've been asked to, we being the board president of the land bank's been asked to come to the Attorney General's office. When am I supposed to be there? April 25th. Yeah.
Seems like a short time frame to end of June to beginning of July to have your money have your funding.
Well, you may not have it in place by then, and I think what they're very mindful of the fact they don't expect you to turn on a dime. I've talked to a number. This is not going to turn on a dime, but they want you to start thinking about this because you know the ship of state turns slowly. So start thinking now. And I still make my pitch to the board that I think you need to look at that last 2.5% and find a way to leverage it. Yes, sir.
So you don't have to borrow the money until you know the rules, but do you also not literally borrow the money until the state has made the commitment?
We won't sign paperwork with, and I can only speak as board president, but I wouldn't ask my board to authorize me to sign paperwork until we're happy with everything that's going to happen with the program and understand the program eventually and understand that the Attorney General is going to turn over $1 million to us. Is that the way you're asking the question?
Yes, that's the question.
Yeah,
Okay.
and secondly, I still think you still move on the 2.5% to the board. You've got money.
Yeah, and I believe that what Jim is hitting at there is go get the other 2.5%. And if you're not successful with this, at least use $200,000 a year to go after demo projects. I don't want to put words in your mouth,
No,
but I think that's what you're hitting at there
Yeah.
too, maybe.
I think you need to do that.
Thank you.
Yes.
Do you know if the rules are just going to be for residential only?
Yes, I'm sure of that. Look,
Well-
there are a lot of shoes out there to fall. Well,
If I may.
if I had a conversation as of like yesterday that said it's
Oh,
going to be residential.
you're going to trump my.
If you heard that they're going to do.
I asked residential complex, and they said yes already.
Well, but that's residential, right?
I'm talking apartment complex.
Right, because they are getting requests from around the state for commercial and industrial, and folks, that's just another hornet's nest. I mean, if the number of homes in Ohio is 100,000, and by the way, we got that from calling building departments, working with MVOs,